for joining us. We'll start, in about a minute or two. Thanks for taking time out from your Friday. And I'm also talking about Chris as well. If you don't know, Chris Sampson, who graciously serves as my moderator on these Ask Me, I'll Answer Fridays, is in Ukraine, Kyiv, Ukraine. And it was not a pretty night for Chris last night. And you want to tell us the death toll there in
Yeah, there's at least and actually the thing I've said before about these is we go like when I'm on site, I could be at like 8 or 9, leave, and it's at 16. It's at 30 now at one particular location that was directly hit by a ballistic missile. The injury count is well over 100, and that's at one particular location. There were 30 locations that were hit in Kiev alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to mention the brutal terrorism that's happening on the ground that
Yeah.
also has a death toll attached to it as well. We're glad you're with us, Chris, and everyone else. We're approaching 150. We're at a minute after the top of the hour. I promise to be relatively brief, but your questions will drive this. And the way this works is, if you don't know, if it's your first time joining us on a Friday, which I call Frank Friday because it's a play on words, folks. I will be extra frank on Fridays. Chris is going to read. Chris is going to, yeah. Chris is going to read the questions that you type in the message chat bar there, and your questions will get answered, unless, of course, I can't answer them. But most of the time, I do. There's so much news. I did not want to go and wait until next Friday or even next week to address so much of the news that's going on this week. Much of it really troubling. But the corruption becomes very, very blatant here. So the way this works is I'll read off some of the stories. I will give you my take and analysis on some of the stories that really grabbed me this week and need some further elaboration. And then we'll take a break for questions that you may have about those stories or other stories. Look, we've had quite the week. We had a United States Air Force active duty major, Jason Watson, on a Capitol steps in D.C., calling for the impeachment, conviction, and removal of the President of the United States. Not something we've seen during either of Trump's terms, and it is quite significant. The man, it's brave to do it. Chris and I were just talking before we came on the air that Major Watson must know what he's in for. It's a rough ride ahead. He will undoubtedly be court-martialed under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I'm sure Secretary of Defense Hegseth will see to it that he's miserable while he's court-martialed, and we'll see what happens. Calling for the firing of your commander-in-chief publicly is problematic, but it goes toward the kind of courage that's needed, and I think signals something. You've heard me say there are cracks in the armor over the past few weeks, and one of them would be an officer in the United States military calling for the removal of the president. More to come on that. Chris, any thoughts on Major Watson?
Actually, in a broader capacity, not just Major Watson, but the fact that Pete Hegseth has been pushing out these flag officers, really, really key officers. And there's a few military folks I would definitely love to see if you would reach out to some of those folks who would definitely talk to you.
Yeah.
There were a few of them that said, let me explain what the consequences are to the new secretary when this particular guy they just ran out, who served here, and had this. Okay, let me tell you the consequences down the road. People will stay in their office, and I think that's very important when you see within days of me seeing that rant by a veteran, clearly calling out the last one that we just lost.
Yeah.
Jason Watson goes up on the steps and says, "I have something to say."
Yeah. Francis is pointing out there's a GoFundMe for Major Watson. I didn't know that. It doesn't surprise me. He'll need counsel, of course. And just be sure you're safe about, the GoFundMes and you're doing the real thing and the real GoFundMe. Hey, let's start with Um, a story that broke this morning on MS Now by Vaughn Hilliard, and you may have seen me post about it almost immediately, and that is the news that acting DNI Bill Pulte continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. The news this morning is that he's started firing, quote, by the dozens, career intelligence officials now outside of the ODNI, the office of the DNI, but in the agencies in the intelligence community. So you say, Frank, this sounds familiar. Didn't he start firing people on day one as acting? Yes, he did, but in most cases they were under his immediate umbrella as the DNI. They were under that purview, even the National Counterterrorism Center. Now, what's been reported this morning by MS Now is that he's reaching out to the 18 intelligence community agencies, CIA, FBI, DIA, State Department Intel, and he's starting to reach into the career personnel that he reportedly thinks is the deep state. And there was a hint from Vaughn Hilliard's reporting this morning that there may be a refusal by some of those people to supply intelligence that Pulte is requesting. So he's cleaning house, and I continue to say, and I'll keep saying it, that we are the most vulnerable we have been, perhaps since 9/11, and getting rid of career officials in the intel community simply because you think they've been there too long, or they're loyal to the Constitution and not to Trump, or because they refuse your request for classified intelligence and you're not establishing a need to know. There'll be a lot more coming on this, folks, but we are less safe today as we approach July 4th than we've been in a very long time. And I'm sure you'll have questions on that.
Yeah, one of our good viewers here said, you're all good viewers, by the way, my friends. Why can Bill Pulte be an acting director in the first place? How has that come to be?
Well, that's all by design, folks. Wow. So you know Pulte is still, he has a day job, on the side. He runs the intelligence community. He's still the head of the FHFA. Do I have that right? Federal Housing Finance Agency. He oversees
The chicken in the hen house.
yeah, he oversees the mortgages, the loans that are government driven and subsidized. And so you'll remember that Pulte has established his loyalty with Trump because he accessed certain persons' mortgage information and then referred it to the DOJ criminally for possible fraud, mortgage fraud investigations. That includes Jim Comey and Adam Schiff and Letitia James and others. So once he's proven his worth that he will exploit and twist information he has access to, it appears that Trump decided, well, you're just the person to do the same thing for the entire community. So he wants Pulte there, and I think he's going to try to keep Pulte there for as long as legally possible, if not longer. And you may ask, well, what is that? Folks, that could go 6 months. That could go 6 months. And he had someone lined up, Jay Clayton, who is currently the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, former chairman of the SEC, a lawyer, someone who understands the Constitution. He's not qualified to be DNI either, but at least some of the leading Democrats folks were saying, hey, listen, he's better than Pulte, and we'll be okay with him if he can answer our questions appropriately. He could have had Clayton in place as a permanent DNI in less than a week's time. He chose to tell Clayton to stay home from the nomination confirmation hearings. He wants Pulte in place. And this game playing that Trump is doing, which is, well, I'm not going to let Clayton come in as the real DNI until the Congress approves the SAVE Act or the Congress approves this or that. I have to tell you something. That's half BS. I really think it's a job and a mission for Pulte to do, and we're watching Pulte do it now. And people are going to come to work on Monday morning in the intel community and wonder where their colleagues in the next cubicle have gone. It's a scary time, and there's more to come from Pulte, who is likely to start tying um, the DNI's office into some conspiracy theory on election fraud and foreign interference with the election. And that'll tie into soon. Well, let's do it now. This will tie into the second story I have, which is Director Kash Patel at the FBI has announced a surge of over 200 investigative analysts to come in and support the sham Atlanta Fulton County fraud election investigation. Um, these are not two things operating in silos, folks. I'm telling you that I believe the script has been written. People have been told we're going full bore on election fraud, and Pulte's part of it. And the FBI now announcing, not coincidentally, they're surging 200 investigative analysts. Now, the New York Times tells us those investigative analysts might say, what the hell what are they going to do? Well, investigative analysts, and it's a term used by the New York Times. CNN said intelligence analysts. These investigative analysts, if that's correct, are actually skilled at records checks. And the New York Times says that some source is saying they're going to check, quote, 708 records, something like that. I don't know what that is, but somehow they've come up with this job to go through and do it. Are they checking potentially 700 voters who should not have voted? There's in the New York Times story, it's also reported that they're going to be looking at thousands of volunteer election workers. Imagine that, right? That's your life now. I volunteer to help my county's election, and now what? I've got 200 FBI folks looking at me for what? So that's going on, not in a silo. Everything there are no coincidences. Just remember that. Any good questions on those stories or other things yet?
Well, actually, several people just wanted to at least have you comment on it. That was I saw a few people saying, "Hey, there was this big breaking news about this," so that's good. Um, I wanted to clarify. I wanted to actually call back and clarify the question earlier because I think Thomas Day really wanted that clarification, which is about the national security requirement law. When we talk about Bill Pulte, how does he get in that position? So Thomas's question was actually, it was my fault for not adding that ending. It didn't just copy and paste on here, but how isn't there a national security advisor law that says that the qualification has to be at least X amount of experience? That's what he was
Oh,
asking.
well, there. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at your question. I'm laughing at the state we're in today when we seem to think that the law actually means anything anymore to this administration. But yes, you're right. You're right. I believe the language is something like significant or substantial national security intelligence experience. He doesn't fit that category at all. The guy ran Pulte Home Building. He builds, and now he's run FHFA, and he's still doing it in his spare time when he runs the Intel community. He's on a mission, folks.
You know what? A combination of questions are overlapping. I just feel like I need to put it on the table because you would have such a good experience on this, Frank. Even FBI analysts admitted that Moscow has that our government is mafia run, and yet earlier also to add not yet and yet, but earlier someone said, "Could you please address the corruption of the American Intelligence Agency? OSS teamed up with organized crime in World War II." So we have at least four times I've seen like this combination of mafia mixed with intelligence mixed with our national security in America. And by the way, it's now 4th of July here in Ukraine, so happy Independence Day to my fellow Americans from a little bit in your future.
Thank you. We're fighting to maintain it, Chris.
Take the ball.
While you're helping fight the Ukraine fight there. So yeah, look, I just real brief on that. The mob, OSS, the connections. You may recall. I've got a column coming out any day now that mentions, and we'll get into this. The financial disclosures of Donald Trump that just came out, and almost, gosh, I think it's over 100, maybe 200 pages.
Wow.
And that's
Yeah.
and think about this. That's what he's willing to tell us about in a disclosure. So
Right.
why am I bringing that up? Um, he's making money hand over fist, something like $2.4 billion, folks, last year alone. When I first read that number, I said, oh, yeah, that's everything and the family, and that's his first term, and it's this term. No, 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 no. It's last year's financial disclosure that we just got our hands on. 2025, $2.4 billion in his pocket as president
Yeah.
of the United States. And how is that linked? Look, the institutions of our government have greased the skids for him to make that money. Pam Bondi, in her earliest days on the job as Attorney General, one of the things she did was get rid of, disband the National Crypto Criminal Task Force that would look at and oversee and regulate and prosecute money laundering and other crimes in the cryptocurrency world. About roughly half of Trump's 2.4 billion disclosed for last year come from crypto platforms and profits, to include World Liberty Financial, his own family crypto platform, where all his investors, many of his investors, lost their shirts, hundreds of thousands of dollars lost by individual investors who thought they'll throw their money on Trump's new crypto platform. But Trump didn't lose a dime. Trump made millions from that platform and through others. So it looks like Pam Bondi was given a signal to get rid of anything that allows oversight of crypto. And she went another step. Here's where we get into kleptocracy, oligarchs, and mob. She also disbanded the kleptocrat money laundering and tracking task force that goes after world leaders who pillage their own country's sovereign wealth and then launder. She got rid of that, folks. So if you look at that, you go, why in the world would an American president want his attorney general to get rid of that? Well, because maybe he's part of it. Maybe he's and telling the difference between the mob and the old KGB, the current intel services in Russia, is virtually impossible.
Friends, I'm logging your questions to Frank. Some of them are kind of comments that germinate good questions when you say them together. So please put them down in the chat. One that was actually also a little bit called back to what we were talking about a couple seconds ago was some of these analysts and folks that have been fired because of Pulte or elsewhere.
Yeah.
Can they seek recourse? Can they, unjustified or wrong for termination suits, etc.? What are the chances now?
Yes, they will become, one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of government employees who have now sued the government for a lack of due process. These employees are supposed to get due process from their agencies, especially if they've got seniority. But yet we have a Supreme Court, folks, that what did they do this week? In one case, they said, yeah, and the president is celebrating. Yeah, the president can pretty much fire whoever he wants. So yes, they'll be suing. This will go on forever. Thankfully, there'll be some pro bono lawyers who will come alongside them. There'll be a class action, but your life goes on hold. Your finances stop. Your income stops, and now you may have to shell out money for a protracted legal battle. So, yes, good news. Yeah, they'll sue. Bad news. This goes on forever, and they may not with the Supreme Court, folks. Let's stay with within the intelligence community, and I'll give you a story that has not gotten a lot of coverage yet this week, which is that the special agent in charge of the FBI's Chicago field office, Doug DePodesta, with about 24 years in the FBI, heading one of the largest field offices in the FBI in Chicago, has seemingly been forced out. He's not happy about it either. In a very rare scenario, he has actually made a statement. And it says here, it was a surprise to him. Announcement was made Wednesday He was told this by his superiors. In a message to his team, meaning the entire Chicago field office, he wrote, quote, "I've never backed down from a fight as long as it meant our personnel could continue serving the FBI's mission. Unfortunately, that has proven unpopular over time." Not done yet. Yeah, that's essentially what he's saying. Trying to get him on as well on the show.
Oh
Um,
yeah, good. Yeah.
and then following up to that, in a bizarre situation, you know, this stuff makes the rounds, as you can imagine, quickly around the FBI leadership in the field, right? Hey, Podesta, one of our own career guy, is gone. And the SAC, the special agent in charge in a neighboring division, Detroit, did what many SACs do. I was an SAC in Northern Ohio in the Cleveland field office. That SAC in Detroit shared Podesta's email to his office with the Detroit office. Hey, our neighboring colleague is out. Here's what he shared with his office. Well, someone made that SAC in Detroit issue a retraction and apology to his office for poor judgment in sharing the Podesta's email with the Detroit office. And I mean, tail between your legs, apology. I'm sorry. I wasn't a good leader by sharing this, blah, blah, blah. So imagine what's going on inside the FBI right now when you cannot even share an email that a neighboring field office leader has.
And then to have another agent had to go out and say, "I'm sorry, I spoke on that."
I'm sorry. And imagine the embarrassment of the head of an office. You know, what does that do to that field office? Our boss had to put his tail between his legs and apologize simply for sending an email announcing that SAC Chicago is out. The circumstances around this, we're going to learn more, folks. I don't know if it has to do with the case of the protesters in Illinois. There's a lot going on in Illinois, folks. And Chicago FBI has the whole state of Illinois. Is it Broadview? Do I have that right? Broadview 6? Do I have that right, folks? Let me know. I don't know, but I know this. The reports, multiple news reports now, are that the U.S. attorney for Chicago traveled to Washington, D.C., met with Attorney General, or still acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, and then the head of the Chicago office was gone. That's what we know. I know journalists are working hard to get the whole story on that. But don't forget, certainly not the first time that heads of FBI field offices have been forced out, including the all-important Washington field office, Las Vegas. And don't forget, the head of the Atlanta field office left right before the execution of the search warrant on the Fulton County ballots. The stories they tell.
What about the John Bolton response that came out this week? Did you see that? Someone mentioned John Bolton briefly, or quite a rollback.
Bolton's response to his conviction?
Yeah, or the response to yeah, essentially. I mean, he's fighting back apparently.
Nah, he's done. He's done.
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah. Look, folks, I know the case. Is it vindictive? Yes. Did he commit a crime? Yes. I don't, am I concerned he's going to get whacked big time in terms of he's going to have to do and consequences? But
Right.
yeah, I mean, look, don't bring classified home. Don't discuss it with your wife and daughter. Don't write a book and save up your classified and take notes, and then during classified meetings, and then send the notes home to your wife for a review. I mean, you got to be an idiot. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, are they going after him? Yes, and yeah, we'll see. But I've moved on. I've moved on from John Bolton. All right, let's. I want to stay on the kind of FBI DOJ news right now before we depart that, which is You may have seen Special Prosecutor Jack Smith had his very first public interview. It happened to be with Nicole Wallace on Deadline White House on MS Now, and kudos to her for getting that. That's what they call in the industry a big get. She got that interview and booked him, first one to do it. A question was asked when I announced I was coming on for Frank Fridays. Someone asked the question, can those cases that Jack Smith had against Trump, remember the two big cases, Mar-a-Lago classified documents, and of course in DC, the attempts to overturn a free and fair election, can those cases be brought again? Short answer, yes. Yes, they can. And then here's the longer answer. They can because Smith was smart. When he saw the writing on the wall from Judge Aileen Cannon, who may well end up your next Supreme Court justice, by the way, seems to be auditioning on a weekly basis. When Aileen Cannon said on the Mar-a-Lago case, hey, you weren't correctly appointed, Mr. Smith. And I think you were appointed unlawfully. So therefore, go away. And the cases have to go away. So when he saw the writing on that wall, he said he did a really smart thing. He dismissed the cases, both in DC and in South Florida. And you say, well, that's terrible, Frank. He should have fought like hell. By dismissing those cases on his own. And by the way, folks, he dismissed them, quote, without prejudice, unquote. That's a legal term that means we could come back and revisit this. And so he did that on purpose. And that means they could be revived. Now, what has to happen for those to be revived? Because remember, even as we speak, the statute of limitations is running.
Right.
Generally 5 years, folks. So what DOJ would have, a new DOJ, and please God, let's have a new DOJ. What they would have to argue
soon
is, yeah, I don't know about that, but what they would have to argue is, look, we believe the statute stopped running. It's called tolling. We believe it paused when Trump became president. Because don't forget, we didn't go forward with this because, we're not supposed to prosecute a sitting president. So the statute of limitations clock stopped for 4 years if Trump makes it for 4 years. And so we're going to come back at this because the statute has not run. That's what that would look like. And then, of course, so that's the legalese. But then, of course, you'd have to address the politics of this. Would it be a disaster if a new AG went at this case and lost? That right? We could have a whole hour on this discussion of, oh my God, I want to see a new AG go at it. You got the evidence, go for it. But as someone said, criminal cases don't get any better with time. They get worse. People forget. They get paid off. They don't remember. And so a lot of that is going to go into a discussion later on. But hey, the short answer to your question is yes, they can be revived, those cases. All right. Anything, Chris, that has come up on?
a lot of people are mainly reacting with you. They're just fired up with you, which actually, let me pause to say this for our friends. If you guys like that you have this level of analysis, Frank, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Get a paying subscription to what Frank is doing, because I appreciate, for instance, Jack Smith was over at that network you used to be at. Look, we like having you here where we can talk to you and people are able to dialogue with you. And I know, I'm gonna ask you this question to slightly put you on the spot. When you see these things in the news, how do you determine what our audience may want to walk away with? And what have you seen in the last few months of these Substack viewers and subscribers and what they write in the comments that connect when you see that happening in the DOJ or, and bring it here on Friday?
So, well, thanks for asking. I'm not a salesman. Chris knows that, but I am now on my own. in terms of income, right? I'm not, for those of you who know me from the old MSNBC, I'm not there anymore. And that income's gone. But I put this into three buckets, Chris. I'd say there's the stories that, as an overarching theme, I am at my heart a national security guy. So if that's your thing, and by the way, sadly, almost everything now is national security. I mean, you know, I had a comedian on my show, Maz Jobrani. Uh, and what did we talk about? In authoritarian environments, the need for parody, satire, and humor. I
Right.
see that I see that as a national security issue right now, and I see it threatened, by the way. So it's a broad umbrella, but you're going to get a lot of national security from me. Number one. Number two, the stories of the week that I don't think are getting covered enough. Like, oh, okay, another head of an FBI field office left. Okay, I that's probably going to get buried in the news that we've got dozens of people being fired by the DNI now. So,
Right.
right, that's the second bucket, is not getting covered enough. Third, getting covered, but I see a different perspective or angle from which to cover the story.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. And so, we're going to cover a story. Well, shoot, I'll do it right now. Um,
Go for it.
people are not connecting the dots that host these shows. Understand, if you host a national cable news show, you're lucky if you got an hour, right, of your show, and you've got a producer and editorial meeting in the morning as to what you're going to put on that show. It's precious time. You throw in your commercials, and there you have it. And you can't have people clicking away or turning away. So what happens is you get disjointed stories where they don't connect the dots to the next story. So, for example, I just did it with the DNI story, firing career officials. And I think the DNI is clearly on a mission to start going at the elections, right? The one coming up and the past elections.
Right.
And he's going to claim fraud and foreign involvement. I almost guarantee you. And then what did I do? I tied it to the FBI director surging 200 analysts to Fulton County to look at what? Election
Right.
fraud. So those stories are not getting connected. I'm going to do another one for you right now. Um, so Trump is suing states, namely this week, Virginia and California. Why? Because, God darn it, they enforce gun rules too much. I'm not kidding you, folks. Trump's Department of Justice announced today it is suing Virginia over its assault weapons ban and California over its law to stop the spread. Get this, to stop the spread of do-it-yourself machine guns. 3D printing, do-it-yourself machine guns that can
Now,
kill.
don't be upset, Frank. We like them here, but in America.
In Ukraine, I tell you what, we'll ship you all of our
But
machine guns.
actually, by the way, actually, even let me make a bigger point. Ours are highly used and regulated. They're not just wandering around the street. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a crazy what they did. And Telegram and these platforms have been brokering STL files. Like, I don't want to get technical about 3D files, but for a while they've been moving parts around that do wind up serving components of death. And there is a market of people who want to live in a very unregulated, unsafe, and unmonitored world of the ability to kill people and not to defend the nation.
I mean, this is it's unbelievable. There are already laws on the book about 3D printed guns, and don't forget Luigi Mangione, right? Killed the CEO of United Healthcare with what? A 3D printed gun. Many of them untraceable, no serial number. Some of them contain so much plastic and such little metal that they go through metal detectors, folks. Yet, our president, and I hate to say it that way, but the president wants to sue. He's suing Virginia and California over, hey, stop enforcing these gun rules. Let's tie that. You want to talk about connecting the dots? Let's tie that to the story this week where we learned that President Trump plans to roll back the rules on placing firearms in the mail. And you say, what in the world is that? Well, connect another dot, right? Because right there, you can see, okay, he's very pro-gun. He's very pro-death. Machine guns are good. Do-it-yourself machine gun, even better. What a great hobby to have. And now we hear he's going to roll back existing rules that say, yeah, we have rules about shipping firearms in the mail. And you think, what's that about? And you connect the dot when you find that his son, Don Jr., has a 1% interest in and sits on the board of a new company called, I kid you not, Grab a Gun. One word. Grab a Gun. Grab a Gun's mission is to become the Amazon of online gun sales. And how will you, of course, order your weapon online? Well, it will come via the mail or UPS or FedEx or Grab a Gun Amazon trucks. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see Amazon delivering guns to your doorstep. I
I mean,
don't
at
know.
least with Trump steaks, we know those didn't work. So there's a whole range of things that once they get there, you'll find it's not even a gun,
Yeah.
maybe?
What can Brown do for you? UPS. Um,
One question that was in the back, and you were really close to a second ago that I want to put on here. Would Donald Trump use a false flag in America to disrupt the midterms?
yes. I think he's already done it or tried to do it. I mean, do we all remember Marjorie Taylor Greene and the, what was it, Jewish space lasers? And then there was the Chinese paper that came, the ballots in Arizona came from China, bamboo paper. I you know, Italian, what else? Italian satellites disrupted the election. So, I mean, that's all. But yes, I do believe, particularly with Bill Pulte, the mortgage guy at DNI, yes, I think we're going to have, and I'm reading between the lines here, folks, with these firings of career people and the kind of hint in the reporting that they're refusing to turn over intel to Pulte. Could that be because they know he's going to blow it up and twist it? So let's say that there's valid reporting, and I'm sure there is, folks, that North Korea, Iran, you pick the country, China, tried to, we know this, they tried to interfere with voting and elections, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what may be happening at the DNI right now is, hey, give me everything you got on foreigners messing with our election. Well, what are you going to do with it? What? I'm going to claim that, who's asking? I'm going to claim that we've got to change the way we vote in November because, God darn it, Chinese tried to mess with us. It's conjecture, but it's logical conjecture. So that when Chris says, "Hey, how do I do this? Why should you consider subscribing to either me or Chris or both?" Yeah, I just hope that there's added value here. And look, I also hope, I'm a big fan of the marketplace having some sway. So when we see the possibility that UPS, FedEx, DHL, Amazon, I don't have a lot of faith in, but it starts saying, wait a minute, does this box is coming from Grab a Gun and we're going to deliver it to the door of this neighborhood or any neighborhood?
Or worse, they're going to drop it from 10 feet.
The drone, the Amazon drone will drop the gun in the front lawn.
What could go wrong with a gun that's been dropped from 10
Right.
feet?
And the kid and the neighborhood kids go, hey, let's grab that box. Yeah, it's wonderful. In all seriousness, folks,
That's another thing. Thank you. Kids grabbing the box. Wow. Oh, okay.
look,
This is getting worse, right?
the delivery theft that occurs, the U.S. mail theft is epidemic. The mail theft is incredible right now. Can you imagine when thieves hear that there's guns in the mail?
So several people have been pointing out the obvious juxtaposition of mail fraud accusations of Donald Trump, that we can't mail ballots anywhere because we're totally afraid terrible things would happen. But guns,
Mail guns, not ballots. Mail guns, yeah.
Completely accountable. Everything will be fine.
I mean, no pun intended, but you want to talk about the U.S. Postal Service being weaponized, right? Postmaster General has already said Yeah, I'm prepared to not deliver mail-in ballots. Yeah, I'm prepared if the states don't comply with Trump's demand for voter records. And now I'm sure he'll be perfectly happy to deliver guns. Okay, um, moving right along in a story there's nothing to even joke about at all, and that is that an 85-year-old man from Germany has become the 21st person to die in ICE custody. Uh, he died on June 24 at 4:30 a.m. His name is Adrian Andreas Florian, 85-year-old German national, was pronounced dead at Valley Baptist Medical Center in Harlingen, Texas. Why should we care? Well, listen, it gets worse, folks. We should care if anybody dies in custody. I don't care if it's your local lockup. But we're into the 20s now on deaths in ICE custody. And Mr. Florian was experiencing signs of dementia, had a history of cognitive impairment, ulcers, and high blood pressure at age 85. And you say, well, how long has he been held by ICE? A couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months? No, 11 months, almost a year. It'll be a year next month that he would have been in custody. He was in custody since August of 2025. In October, he was placed in a rehab center in custody, and his official cause of death is currently pending an autopsy. Don't hold your breath on an honest reporting by the feds, anyway, on that autopsy. Let's hope that a medical examiner for the county or state, oh, it's Texas, oh, I don't know, but let's hope that the medical examiner does the right thing on this autopsy. But listen, the inhumanity of grabbing an 85-year-old who's demented and in ill health and holding him for a year is obvious. And also in Texas this week, we learned that a nun, I believe in the El Paso area, McAllen, Texas, was walking to mass in wearing her habit. She wears a all white habit, was grabbed by ICE. And only because of the demands of area Congress members did ICE become pressure and release her. But that also tells me if they released her, they had no grounds to hold her. Rest assured, to avoid even embarrassment, if they had the goods on her as being here undocumented, they would have refused. The fact that they released her upon demand, yeah, they didn't have any evidence that she was here undocumented. What again about the humanity? The woman is wearing a habit, walking to mass. It doesn't take much to confirm that she is a nun.
We do have a problem with a portion of the Republican Party deciding to argue with the Pope. So there's that. Blues and Bob, who's been a great viewer with you for a while now, asking great questions always. Thank you, Blues and Bob. Why can't we inspect these prison camps?
Well, why can't our members of Congress, as they are allowed, get access even without notice? They are supposed to be able to audit and access these ICE detention facilities on a moment's notice, and they're not being allowed, even when they give substantial notice. I'll be there Tuesday, 3:00. It's often not happening, and when the rare moment when they're allowed access, many of them come out saying this looks like it was staged. What I saw was bad enough, but it also looks like the place got cleaned up in a hurry. So it's horrible. The food is horrible. It's infested reportedly with worms and bugs. Healthcare is non-existent. Sanitary conditions, particularly for women, non-existent. Just inhumane, and that's part of it, isn't it? It's part of it. Um,
As Jill says, as a Jewish American, I keep remembering the question, you knew this was happening. How did you let it continue? Thank you, Jill.
I think we're going to be asked that throughout history if our history books even let our grandkids learn about this. That's why we have to tell them at an age appropriate time. Um, my column that's going to come out soon is going to go through in great detail. This is the kind of the next thing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because there has been a lot of coverage, but I am going to dig into some things for you, and particularly in the column that you may not know. And I don't want to give it away. I don't want a spoiler alert for the column. But and by the way, all my paid subscribers get my entire column, no paywall, um, uh, no extra charge, right? As they say. But 2.4 billion, about half of it coming from crypto. And you said, well, what's wrong with that, right? You may have a backyard barbecue this weekend, maybe friends, maybe family. Some of them voted for Trump, and they might say, if God forbid the topics turn to politics, I hope they don't. But if they might say, you know, what's the big deal? We have a smart businessman who made 2.4 billion last year while he was running the country. What's wrong with that? Well, much of it is corrupt. If that half that came from crypto, you got to dig into it as I do in my column and understand that people poured money into that, his own platform and others that he's invested in, that he has no business doing deals with. The Pakistan government, Abu Dhabi sovereign wealth, the Saudis. Our president is financially intertwined with them. And how about this for his him and his kids opened World Liberty Financial. Mhm. One of the first big investors, and I mean millions, to get that up and running and give it a boost as it gets off the ground, was a guy from China who's the CEO of Binance. This guy did prison time related to money laundering, related to failing to stop money flowing through his platform, Binance, right? That had to do with child sex exploitation, drug trafficking, and terrorism. That's the guy that pumped big money into World Liberty Financial for the Trumps. So tell me more about how he's allowed to conduct business by all he wants. And then start looking at, and then of course you've already heard me say how Pam Bondi, like week one, got rid of the prosecutors and agents who go after crypto fraud and monitor kleptocracy and money laundering. It was at that point, it was open season for Trump and his family.
Right.
Then look at the other half of his wealth, which is non-crypto. And you could say, well, it's a bunch of crap merchandise that's branded, you know, and from the. By the way, only these really big devout Christians on the MAGA side, folks, who don't go to church, quite frankly, but the Trump Bible that has the Declaration of Independence in it, because I think that Christ on the Sermon on the Mount, I think Jesus gave us the Declaration of Independence. I don't know. I think that's what they're saying. It has the Constitution, and it has all the words to Lee Greenwood's. What's the name of the song? I'm so tired of hearing it. Lee Greenwood's
Proud to be an American.
Proud to be an American. I don't know, but the guys
so terrible. I literally have a chronicle of 10,000 albums in my head at a moment's notice, and my brain goes, "No, you're not going to recite that one, Chris.
blocked it. I blocked it
You're not going to do that one, Chris."
because I'm sorry, my Bible
But
doesn't have.
just like Trump steaks, this Bible doesn't work.
But he only made 200 grand, 200 grand from Trump Bible. So they're not scooping up the Bibles, but they are scooping up the Celebration coin, and the big money is coming in on the non-crypto side last year at Mar-a-Lago Resort, where he's gone way beyond previous years of profit, because now, of course, here comes all that business. And do you know it's now $1 million to just sign up to be a member? Then you still have to pay your monthly and annual dues. Okay. And people are tripping over themselves to do that and to have their events at Mar-a-Lago. Why? To get access to him and curry favor. Same goes for Doral in Miami, Doral Golf Course and Resort, where he's held political events. The GOP has recently held their conference there. And guess who has to stay at all of these places and further line the president's pockets when there are events there? The United States Secret Service. Our tax dollars that pay Secret Service salaries are actually pumping money into Trump and his pockets, his resorts, because the Secret Service stays there. And from what has been reported previously, they don't get a government rate. They pay full ride
Right.
on that. Yeah. So that
I
we
have a question for you that's looming in all this. I think is actually a two-part question, if you don't mind. I think it really will help a lot of the viewers in tonight's conversation. Let me do it. Let me do the second one first. How much did the FBI have to spend in, say, percentage of focus on financial crimes versus like terrorism and other types of crimes? How big is financial crime at the level of these people?
so it's not in the FBI's order of priorities, at least when we lived on a normal planet.
Normal planet type, by the way. Normal planet
Yeah,
type.
normal planet, it was counterterrorism number one, counterintelligence number two. Then it jumped to cybercrime, civil rights, public corruption. You notice we haven't gotten to financial crimes yet.
Yeah,
And then comes
interesting.
significant transnational organized crime and white collar financial crime. So the problem is it's not fair to just look at the priority listing, because you could actually have far more people, because white collar crime and financials is so complicated. It requires more personnel, your accounting technicians, and financial analysts. And, it might take a whole squad to figure out the fraud within an entire healthcare system, right?
Mhm.
So you might actually
Wait,
have
I'm
more.
sorry. Wait, are you saying there's fraud in the healthcare system? Hold on, I have to write that down for another
It's
segment.
shocking, I know. But when I was, as
Friends, I'm sorry. I live in war. I have a little sense of humor
yeah.
at this point. I've go ahead.
Do you know when I was in, I for a time when I was,
Some CEO might get shot. I'm concerned from the terrorism point of view that some guy will be very upset about that and will go up and just shoot a CEO with like a 3D printed gun, Frank.
which apparently you can get in the mail now. But anyway, when I was the assistant special agent in charge in Miami, I had, for a couple of years, I had the white collar crime branch. Just to give you an idea, 9 squads of agents and analysts working white collar crime. 9 squads, and 2 devoted entirely to healthcare fraud. And the stats we had were that 25 to 30% of all Medicare and Medicaid claims coming out of South Florida were fraudulent. Fraudulent. Yeah. So yes, and so it takes a lot of personnel, but it's there. How about this story? You want to talk about, since we're on white collar crime, why don't we talk about a case that DOJ dropped, right? Because we should be concerned with the cases that are not only being opened in retribution, but the cases that aren't being worked
Right.
are a clue, right? And so, for example, DOJ has dropped a criminal probe of Abbott Laboratories that involves the contamination of baby formula that killed babies. How about 9 babies dead linked to contaminated baby formula produced by Abbott Laboratories? I would, an agent, a white collar crime agent, would give their right arm to work that case. That's a case right there. 9 dead infants. It's been dropped, folks. Now you could catch that on the news and go, well, that's kind of weird. That sounds weird. Maybe they didn't have any evidence. Or you could connect the dots and figure out that Abbott Laboratories gave Trump a $500,000 donation. $500,000
Exactly.
is apparently what it costs to get your 9 dead baby case dropped. And so those are the dots that we need to connect. Um, this keeps happening. We're allegedly, folks, we'll see, I guess, this weekend. Trump is talking about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. He says he might hand out 250 pardons.
One person said, "Can you explain the difference between civil and criminal fraud?"
Yes. I could. Not a lot. The FBI doesn't work a lot of civil fraud. That involves torts, lawsuits in civil court with entirely different rules of civil procedure than criminal procedure. You're not going to prison just for the civil side, the civil case, but there's often you have to prove damages. There's a lesser standard. There's a lesser standard. Remember, a criminal standard is beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed this crime.
Right. And
And
based on statute, you know, you
oh yeah, you have to point to a statute that's been violated. A civil court is a lower standard. It's more likely than not, a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not that you did this thing. Uh, there is a, for those nerds out there on healthcare fraud now that Chris has brought it up. So there is a civil action that the FBI does work in healthcare fraud, and it's a Latin term called a key tam.
mm,
And for those of you who want homework this weekend, look up key tam and healthcare fraud. And this is a great thing though. A person can come forward from within the healthcare industry and show evidence of fraud, kind of a whistleblower thing. But Congress years ago said, we're so concerned about healthcare fraud, we're going to give you money if you come forward with healthcare fraud allegations that stand up. And it's a key tam action is a civil suit, folks, but the FBI work it. Little known fact. And what is the money you get if this works out for you? A percentage
wow.
the fraud that you reported and the FBI finds. If they find $10 million of fraud, you get a huge percentage of that. That's yours. Key tam,
Amazing.
little known fact. Any questions on, before I move on to
No, I think we're good on that one.
stories? Okay. For those of you still on the fence about Elon Musk and his technology and AI generally, it came out this week, and this isn't whistleblower, this isn't sources. This is the head of digital and artificial intelligence for the United States Department of Defense, who actually had to say in a court document, and you'll say, my God, how did we get here? I'll tell you in a minute. What did he say officially under oath? That Elon Musk's Grok government chatbot model was used to launch missiles and enabled the U.S. forces to deploy over 2,000 munitions to 2,000 distinct targets within 96 hours in Iran. So, you know how we were scratching our head a few weeks ago about, hey, that girls' school that was tragically hit,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that was AI screwed up. We're way beyond that. We're at the head of the whole thing at the Pentagon saying, yeah, we used Elon Musk's Grok to hit 2,000 targets. And does this get reported a lot? No. How did it come out?
I missed that one, and actually, I track this stuff.
How did it come out? In a quiet little uh, court action where the Trump administration. So there's a lawsuit in about a data center, right?
Mm-hmm.
An Elon Musk data center near Memphis. And there was a lawsuit there to basically say, this is useless to us, get it out of our backyard, we don't want it. And here comes the Trump administration, maybe in a tactical error, but trying to defend their friend Elon. Here comes the Pentagon. in this little lawsuit on the data center. And the head of AI for the Pentagon says what? Oh, this is very important. Elon Musk is very important to us. Please don't cause his data center in Memphis to go away. And of course, the judge is like, what the hell are you talking about? Well, we used Elon Musk's AI to hit 2,000 targets. So, and I'm sure the reporter, if there was a reporter, I'm sure there was some local reporter, Chris. Imagine the local reporter, right? Who's like, hey, cover the data center. And he's sitting there, he or she's sitting there going, oh my God, did he just say that? There you go.
Well, here's what concerns me, and I see one of our friends said we need to put it into AI and billionaires. I'm a tech guy. You know this with me. I'm a tech junkie, and I test a lot of these platforms, and I have two concerns. I'm gonna do them in order. I beat Grok in the argument about Apostle Paul and all the scriptures, and actually the way I beat it first is I know my stuff. I'm a journalist, so we have a chain of custody of information. So that's how I usually approach the Bible. And so I was winning the argument publicly. Then I decided to use Grok internally against Grok external and have it argue, merely to test what the system would do, knowing, because I know this case too well, it's a perfect litmus, right? And it just couldn't get it right. Now, Grok.com version, or what was built into your backend system, got it correct. It ran a raw, straightforward, historical way of responding. But Grok public version was saying, well, no, because the scripture says so, therefore, which is called fideism. So it's not the right way to do it. So imagine that system trying to make AI decisions of weapons. But let me contextualize this for our friends. I live in Ukraine, and we have people who are literally building the type of language learning models that are designed for tracking. The differences, the huge differences, instead of being Elon Musk, you have this corrupt system where they're trying to find some way to integrate him in so he can make a lot of billions. We have people here trying to defend. And if they miss the AI target, basically, like for instance, with trying to hit positions beyond Russian, like what is basically now a 20-mile-an-hour kill zone. And now electronic warfare is so intense. The only thing that's going to happen on the other side is that AI kicks in and says, remember everything I taught you about your target. And it does the remaining part so that once it's past the electronic warfare line, the optical side of them shooting it down, the rest it's calculated to hit its target. The seriousness of the Ukrainians trying to hit that target is radically different than Elon Musk trying to profit, Donald Trump Jr. trying to profit, Pete Hegseth trying to just make it go away. And I think that's the biggest concern we have on the table right now about what's happening with Elon Musk. Instead of having like a serious agenda, we're like, okay,
Yeah.
look, we
Yeah.
have AI, but we're going to actually use it to defend people. That's not the objective right now.
Yeah. Well, and now we got to start being concerned about Grok defense model. I didn't know there's a Grok defense model. Oh, okay. And for people who want to dig into this lawsuit, this is really neat, right? You get these nuggets that come out of a lawsuit. It's the NAACP is alleging that the Elon Musk, XAI data center near Memphis is illegally polluting the air. And of course, I'm sure the White House went, hold on, the NAACP threatening Elon Musk. We can't have that. And so here comes, they dispatch the head of AI for the Department of Defense. Unbelievable. And he makes this lengthy disclosure about targeting and using Musk's data, seemingly to do what? To protect the data center in Memphis? Oh my God. Okay, I'm wrapping up. And folks, that if you've been here before, I always wrap with one or two good news stories, lest we all go off and become depressed. And I don't want to do, because it is a holiday weekend and it is our country. It's ours. It's ours. And for those of us who are feeling like, I don't know what to feel for July 4th, I'm telling you, this is not our republic is not a failed experiment. I'm not going to say that yet. I'm not ready to say that. What I am going to say is what scientists do when their experiments are going south on them. They're looking at their experiment going, uh-oh, this is not what we thought would happen. And what they do is they double down on scientific method. What we need to do, if we think our democracy is failing, is double down on what makes a democracy, which is the rule of law, the Constitution, and three equal branches of government, and don't give up on it. Use that scientific method model. My two stories, a good news story, John Brennan, who's been a guest on this show, former director of the CIA, folks. You can find it, the recorded version. If you're a paid member, you can look at this. You can look at this, the special guest I had on AI and data centers just about a week ago, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
from the University of Illinois. John Brennan, former CIA director, they're coming after him criminally. And you know what he did? He said, yeah, right back at you. I'm filing a lawsuit against the government agencies who are coming at me. And I'm telling them two things. One, you got to preserve all your records that clearly are exculpatory, that clearly would get me off the hook. Don't be destroying those records, Mr. Brennan.
Right.
And then secondly, I love where he filed this lawsuit. He filed it in D.C. because the criminal case against him is with Aileen Cannon in South Florida. So he says, you know what? I'll do the same to you. I'm filing my suit in D.C. And so I love that. I see it as a good news story. And then I'll close with this. The Pope today, Pope Leo, whether you're Catholic or not, I'm not Catholic, but you got to like this guy.
He's getting me.
He issued a message to America on our 250th anniversary. And you got to read it. But don't tell J.D. Vance about it because his head will spin. The Pope, on his message to us on our 250th anniversary, reminded us that we are a free democracy, that the Bible tells us to treat migrants and foreigners with special care. And he goes into all of this in 2 or 3 pages of an incredibly well-written message to America that I'm sure the White House is livid about because it hit all the topics: caring for people, immigrants, freedom of speech, freedom. Get this, the Pope is in this little message to America is going, and don't forget, freedom of religion. People should be able to worship whatever the hell they want to worship. He didn't say it that way. That's my version. He didn't say you all need to be Catholics. He said, no, you got to have freedom of worship there, freedom of religion. So, don't tell J.D. Vance. Those are the good news stories. Let's thank Chris Sampson for moderating today.
Thank you.
Check him out on Substack. Give some consideration to throwing some coffee money at us if you can. You know where I'm at because you're here on Substack. And look at my upcoming.
And friends, I'm going to say this again. I'm going to put you on the spot, Frank. And it's basically for everyone else. I did community radio in Houston for many years, and one of the things that we always were worried about was that thing that we had that was uniquely ours would go away. If you had that favorite restaurant you used to love to go to, and then suddenly you went by and you're like, remember when we used to go there, and then you stopped being a patron? Well, that's how things go away. And so I think about Substack as being unique. We have 577 viewers who came here today knowing that they valued what you were saying, and the way we guarantee people keep doing that on this platform is not just the subscriptions, but paid subscriptions, even if you can do the $5 one. The reason is simple. We're in chaos right now, and I'm going to tell you guys as someone who's actually on 4th of July now, because it's 1:00 in the morning in Ukraine. Tomorrow, there are going to be a lot of Ukrainians wishing me happy Independence Day, and I want you guys to really internalize that by saying you are now the press with Frank by being the patrons of what he is doing, what the others are doing here, him and Glenn and all the other different voices. They're coming to you directly, and there's no middle person like an executive director who's like, I don't know, maybe we'll have Frank on today at 3. Will Frank help us today if we have a message of the day, if we can get Frank in 3? No, Frank decides to come and talk to you guys like often so that you can get that. And so therefore,
all right. You're embarrassing me. But anyway, I thank you, Chris. But look, cable news is experiencing serious problems. I don't know if you've seen it, but CNN is trying to figure out its future right now. But now it looks like CNN might get spun off, and well, that's a good thing, right? I think it's a sign that they're not making enough money for the big the big powers that be, right? So we were all worried that, wait a minute, the Ellisons are going to own CNN. This is terrible. Yes, yes, it is. The other terrible thing is if it's viewed by companies as not making enough money. And now we're hearing NBC, right? Remember, MS Now spun off. Now, now NBC Comcast, Comcast is now saying, well, I think we got to let NBC go. It's not making the money, folks. And I don't know what the future is, but I do know there's some really good journalism and reporting happening on Substack. Have a great weekend. Celebrate in your own way. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.
God bless America.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everybody.